We've been in the Salt Marsh. We've had a chance to look at both the Salt Marsh sparrow and the willet.
So we've been here all day. Now it's time to see where this salt marsh stands.
Yeah, I wonder how the environmental changes have been affecting those bird species.
Let's talk to Chris.
All right.
Well, I can tell you a little bit about what's going on out here. A lot of the marshes are pretty well protected. There's good coastal protection laws that mean that there isn't development right in the marshes anymore. But that said, there are still things to be concerned about. One is that building right along the edge of the marsh can lead to the flow of nutrients into the marsh, which changes the whole plant community. It's even things like the fertilizers that people spray on their lawns can just add nitrogen and phosphorus to the water, which gives some plants an edge over other plants and just changes the nature of the vegetation. So another thing that is actually quite positive is that there's been a lot of work done to restore marshes in coastal areas. So a lot of this marsh, not right where we're standing, but a lot of the marsh we've walked through 30, 40 years ago was full of Phragmites, which is this tall reed. It would be this tall and it would be all one grass species. And there are a few birds that occur in it, but these species we've been looking at, the ones that are found only here, would not go into the Phragmites when it's that dense. It's just such a different type of habitat. And so a lot of work has been done here at Barn Island, which is one of the very first places where this type of marsh restoration was done in the country. A lot of work has been done to restore the type of natural tidal flow that you get when the water comes in every day. And that increases the salinity of the water and the soil, which knocks back the Phragmites and allows these natural plants, the Spartina and some of the other plants, to come back in.
We've seen lots of birds, but what other animals can you typically find in this marsh?
Well, the birds are the obvious thing because they're up and they're flying around and they're making a lot of noise, but the birds wouldn't be here if there wasn't stuff for them to eat. And so most of the creatures that live out here are down in the grass or in the mud and are very inconspicuous. Lots of little spiders, lots of insects. We were just looking at a snail. So if we get down here and poke around, see there's a shell here, a bivalve. So there's a lot of stuff if you get down and poke around, and that's what all the birds are eating there. And like I say, if you didn't have a good food base for these things that we kind of notice, then they just wouldn't be here.
So it's so important to protect this.
Absolutely. It doesn't look like much. You've got wet feet, there's mud everywhere. It's maybe not as exciting as looking at a bird nest, but really this is the basis of it all. If it wasn't for the plants and the insects and other things that live on the plants, then there wouldn't be anything for birds to eat or for mammals to eat, or the things that are more prominent and that we maybe are kind of more excited about when we go out into nature.
So you mentioned sea level before, and so how is that affecting the salt marsh?
Well, one of the effects of climate change is that the sea levels are rising, and there's good evidence that this is already happening. It's a very, very gradual process, a few millimeters a year, so it's not real obvious. But in a marsh that's as flat as this, or a place as flat as this, it doesn't take very much rise in sea level for it to really change the nature of the marsh. And so where we're standing right now is fairly low. The plants here are really different from those where we've seen nests. And just a few inches is all it takes to go from perfectly good nesting habitat to habitat where the nest will flood and the babies will drown, or the eggs will float away, or the birds won't even try to nest at all because it just looks wrong to them. So a relatively small amount of sea level rise will cause big changes in the plants and in the birds.
So what is in the future for these species here, and what can be done to help the rising sea levels?
Well, it's pretty bleak. I mean, over the long term, not immediately, but over the next few decades, if the climate continues to warm and if sea levels do rise the way in which all the predictions suggest that they will, then a lot of these marshes will disappear. And so the key is going to be identifying those places where the marshes are high enough that they will persist even as the sea levels rise. And then also identifying places where marshes can move to inland and kind of plan. Now, these marshes have not been here forever. The marshes have come and gone, sea levels have gone up and down historically, and marshes have moved as a result of that. The big difference today is that we've built houses, and just heard the train, railroad tracks, roads and so on, all along the upland edge of them. And so that limits where the marshes can go to without it really affecting people. So it requires a lot of planning to identify those places where we can let marshes move inland. Maybe change the land a little bit to encourage those marshes to move in the places where we want them to go. And that's really what it's going to take if we want to protect not just the birds, but everything else that's out here.